Welcome to Infinite Business Dynamics. Today, we are diving deep into the strategic case. It's the absolute foundation of any disciplined investment. Before a single dollar gets spent, before any big project even gets off the ground, we have to answer the most fundamental question of all. Why? Really, why should this investment even exist? Getting this one single question right, well, it could be the difference between a huge success and a really, really costly failure. So, let's get into it.
So why do so many expensive projects just completely flame out, sometimes before they even get started? It's a question that, it probably keeps executives and officials up at night. You see it all the time. A multi-million, maybe even $1 billion project gets the green light, it eats up a ton of resources, and then, poof, it just fails. It doesn't deliver, or it's obsolete the day it launches. And you know what? The real problem usually isn't bad execution. Nope. It's a failure of thinking right at the very beginning. Nobody stopped to rigorously ask, what is the problem we're actually trying to solve here?
Okay, so let's think of any major investment like a journey. And on this journey, you have to pass through a series of gates. Each gate asks you tougher and tougher questions. But here's the thing. You can't even get to the other gates if you can't get through the very first one, the strategic gate. This is the spot where an idea has to prove it has a legitimate reason to even exist.
And this visual just lays it out perfectly. That first golden gate, that's the strategic case. Its job is to ask one simple, powerful question. Why are we doing this? And only when that question is answered with total, absolute clarity does the whole idea earn the right to move on. Only then do you get to the economic case to check for value, the commercial case for delivery, the financial case for affordability, and finally, the management case for execution. Look, all those other steps are critical, for sure, but they are completely meaningless if that strategic why isn't crystal clear from the get-go.
So here's the whole 5-case model right here. It all kicks off with our focus for today, proving the strategic need, the why. Then, and only then, you move on to find the best bang for your buck in the economic case. After that, you check if the market can actually deliver it in the commercial case. Then you prove you can actually pay for it in the financial case. And finally, you show you've got the right team and plan to pull it off in the management case. See? It's a powerful, logical sequence, but the whole thing, everything, hinges on getting that first step right.
Now, this is a really crucial mindset shift. You have to fall in love with the problem, not the solution. Think about how many expensive projects are born just because somebody has a pet idea or there's some shiny new technology they're just dying to use. That is completely backward. A truly disciplined, strategic approach always, and I mean always, starts with the problem.
And this just illustrates the point brilliantly, doesn't it? On the left, you've got a solution that just shatters into a million pieces because, well, it wasn't aimed at anything real. It's a classic solution in search of a problem. But on the right, you see a clear, targeted response to a well-defined need. The strategic case forces you to define that target, the real policy challenge, the market opportunity, the gap in your capability, before you ever start thinking about the arrow. If you don't do this, you're really just shooting in the dark.
No investment is an island. It can't be. It has to be a piece of a much, much larger puzzle. It has to clearly and demonstrably support the organization's big picture strategy. So whether we're talking about a government agency trying to align with national policy or a huge corporation pushing its mission forward, the investment must drive that mission. And the strategic case, that's the document that proves it. It shows exactly how this one action moves the whole organization closer to where it needs to go.
Oh, I love this visual because it just makes the whole idea so tangible. Strategy is really all about getting from where you are today to where you need to be tomorrow. And that space in between, that's what we call the capability gap. Maybe your current tech is just too slow, or maybe your services can't keep up with demand. Investment is the bridge you build to close that gap. So you see, it's not really about spending money, it's about buying the capability you need to get a strategic result.
So what actually creates these gaps in the first place? Well, usually it's pressure from the outside world. It could be new government policies that force your hand. It might be surging customer demand that your current systems just can't handle. A lot of the time, it's some kind of technological disruption that completely redefines your industry. Or maybe it's a growing operational risk you just can't afford to ignore anymore. The strategic case has to identify these drivers to prove that this change isn't just a nice idea, it's absolutely urgent.
Okay, so that's all the theory. But what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's take a look at a company that absolutely mastered this discipline to become a global giant, Zara. This case study is really going to bring all these ideas to life.
Zara's total dominance in the brutal, lightning-fast world of fashion, that was no accident. It was a direct result of a brilliant strategic case. See, they didn't just design better clothes. They completely redesigned their whole approach to the business. They looked at the industry, identified a fundamental problem, understood their own massive capability gap, and then made a series of incredibly bold, strategic investments to close it. Let's break down exactly how they pulled it off.
Okay, let's look at this breakdown. The big strategic problem was speed. Simple as that. Back then, traditional fashion supply chains took 6, maybe 9 months to get a product from a sketchpad into a store. That created a massive capability gap for them. They were just way too slow and inflexible for fast fashion. And the drivers for change were obvious: crazy volatile customer demand and just fierce global competition. So what was Zara's response? A total masterclass. They just rejected the slow offshore model and invested heavily in production closer to home and in vertical integration. This gave them this super tightly coordinated system, which led to their signature move: twice weekly store replenishments, a speed that was totally unheard of at the time.
And the result? Well, by focusing like a laser on closing that one single strategic gap, Zara built one of the fastest, most responsive supply chains on the entire planet. And this wasn't just some small operational improvement. This became their core competitive advantage. It let them completely transform an industry. That is the power of getting the why right from the very beginning.
So, we've firmly established the why. The strategic case gives us our destination. It confirms the journey is necessary, and it points us in the right direction. But that's only the first half of the story. Now we have to figure out the best way to actually get there. This slide captures that handoff just perfectly. The strategic case, that's our black bridge. It defines the destination. It tells us why we have to cross this gap. Then, the economic case, the golden bridge, takes over to evaluate all the different ways we could get across. It analyzes the alternatives, it weighs the costs against the benefits, and it figures out which path gives us the absolute best value for our money. It's that critical shift from defining the purpose to a really rigorous analysis of value. Now, in our next explainer, we're going to dive deep into that economic case. That's where strategy gets tested against hard numbers and tough appraisal. Thanks for joining us here at Infinite Business Dynamics. And remember, before you do anything else, you have to master the gateway. Lead the strategy.
In the previous part, we introduced this concept. In this part, we revisit it briefly to reinforce and extend the learning.
Welcome to Infinite Business Dynamics. You know, every year, billions, literally billions of dollars are spent on these huge projects that just completely fail. And you know why? Most of them don't fail because of bad engineering or terrible management. Nope. They fail before a single brick is laid because they just couldn't answer one simple question. Why are we even doing this? And that question, well, that's the heart of what we're talking about today, the strategic case. It's the absolute foundation of any smart investment. So let's dive in. Okay, so it's a principle that sounds almost too simple, but it's amazing how often it gets ignored. Strategy always comes first. You've got to nail down the why before you even start dreaming about the how or the what. And look, this isn't just some friendly suggestion. It's the absolute bedrock of any disciplined, successful process. I want you to think of any major investment as a journey that has to pass through 5 critical gates. And this one, the strategic case, is the very first one you come to. You can think of it as the ultimate test of an idea's right to exist. Because if a project can't prove why it's needed, right here and right now, then guess what? All those other gates, the ones dealing with money, markets, and management, they stay firmly shut. No exceptions. And this right here is where so many brilliant-sounding projects just go completely off the rails. They start with a cool solution, not a real problem. On the left, you see that chaos, a project with no anchor, no real purpose. But on the right, that's the power of discipline. The strategic case forces us. It makes us start by defining the problem. Is it a gap in the market, a new policy we have to meet, a critical weakness in our operations? Without that focus, we just end up with really expensive, shiny solutions, desperately looking for a problem to solve. So how do you actually build one of these? A rock-solid strategic case? Well, it really boils down to proving 3 key things: that the investment is absolutely necessary, that it fits with your bigger goals, and that it actually makes sense in the world we live in. Let's break down exactly what those core components look like. Right. First thing, no investment is an island. It has to connect to the bigger picture. Your project, that single point of light, has to plug directly into the main grid of your organization's goals. It doesn't matter if it's a government policy or a corporate mission statement. This is where you prove your project isn't just some random good idea, but that it's a vital, necessary piece of a much larger puzzle. You know, when you strip it all away, every strategic case is about this one powerful image, building a bridge. On one side, you've got where you are right now, your current state, your current abilities. And on the other side, that's where you need to be, your required future state. That space in between, that's what we call the capability gap. An investment has one job, and one job only, to build the bridge that closes that gap. So what creates this gap in the first place? Why do we need a bridge at all? Well, it's always driven by real-world pressures. It could be policy pressure, maybe new regulations that force you to change. It could be a huge spike in demand for your services that your current setup just can't handle. Or, a big one these days, technological disruption. Think about what streaming did to CDs. Or maybe it's a growing operational risk that you just can't afford to ignore anymore. Identifying these drivers is how you prove that making a change isn't just an option, it's essential. And remember, a strategy never ever exists in a vacuum. It has to be a direct response to the world around it. I mean, political winds are always shifting, economies go up and down, new tech seems to pop up every day, and what society expects from you can change overnight. A strong strategic case is grounded in these external realities. Any plan that ignores this stuff isn't just weak, it's a ticking time bomb. And let's not forget, strategy is intensely human. It's not just about spreadsheets and data. It's about people. You've got this whole ecosystem of stakeholders, right? Citizens, regulators, partners, your own employees. And your project's legitimacy depends not just on cold, hard logic, but on their trust. That's why you have to map out who has influence and who has a vested interest. Because let me tell you, a brilliant strategy that loses the trust of its key players is already dead in the water. Okay. Here's a crucial test for a truly disciplined strategy. You don't just jump to one big shiny solution. You have to rigorously and honestly look at a range of responses. First, you have to seriously consider do nothing. Is the status quo actually survivable? Next, you explore do minimum. Can we solve this with a small tweak or a minor fix? It's only after you've ruled those out that you earn the right to explore a big transformational change. This process makes sure your final choice is the right one, not just the most exciting one. And when you have this kind of strategic clarity, it's amazing how it elevates every single part of your organization. Let's take procurement, for example. Without a clear strategy, buying stuff is just transactional. You're just trying to get the best price. But with a strategic case, suddenly procurement becomes this powerful engine for building the organization's capabilities. You're making smart, long-term decisions that directly push your mission forward. It's a total game changer. You know where this discipline is absolutely 100% critical? In the public sector. And why is that? Because public investment isn't about profit. It's about creating public value. The strategic case acts as the ultimate safeguard. It ensures that taxpayer money is actually aligned with policy, that it's stewarded responsibly, and that it genuinely contributes to a better society. It's the mechanism that turns public funds into public good. All right, we've gone through the whole framework, all the theory. But what does this actually look like when it's put into practice by one of the biggest brands in the world? Let's pivot from theory to action with a fantastic real-world case study. Let's break down how the fashion giant Zara used this exact framework. For them, the strategic problem was crystal clear. Traditional fashion supply chains were just painfully slow. This created a massive capability gap. To win, they had to crush their production cycle from months down to just a few weeks. So what was driving this need for speed? Insanely fast-changing fashion trends and just brutal global competition. Their strategic response wasn't a small tweak. It was a complete transformation. They moved production closer to home, vertically integrated their operations, and started restocking stores twice a week. And the result? One of the most agile and dominant supply chains the world has ever seen. And Zara's story really teaches us this one profound lesson, captured perfectly in this quote. Strategy must be translated into capabilities that make the strategy possible. See, it is not enough to have a great idea written down in a mission statement. Zara's strategy to be fast demanded a supply chain that was literally built for speed. Every single investment they made was a deliberate move to close that capability gap and bring their powerful strategy to life. So the strategic case gets us across the first half of that bridge. It gives us a powerful, undeniable answer to the question, why do we need to change? But it doesn't tell us the best way to get to the other side. And to figure that out, we have to move from the why of strategy to the which of economics. So in our next explainer, we're going to walk through that second gate and tackle the economic case, That's where we rigorously test our options to find the absolute best value for money. Thanks so much for joining us at Infinite Business Dynamics. Master the gateway, lead the strategy, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's next.